Miami Dolphins head coach Mike McDaniel just saved his job for the time being with that big win on the road in Week 8 against the Atlanta Falcons. I am Nick Roloff. This is Dolphins Today by Chat Sports. But with the Dolphins coming into Week 8 with a 1-6 record and a lot of disasters, blown leads against the Chargers, blown leads against the Panthers, blown games against the Browns, like everybody, including me, was saying, hey, this man, Mike McDaniel, needs to go. He clearly isn't the head coach of this football team. But we've seen reports from Adam Schefter, Ian Rappaport, talk about how McDaniel's seat isn't as hot as you would have imagined it being with the start to the season. Many people wondered, okay, then, that's fine. But what if they go out and look lifeless against the Falcons and then return home and get blown out on national television against the Baltimore Ravens on Thursday Night Football this upcoming week? Well, then it makes logical sense that they ultimately do fire McDaniel after that loss against the Ravens this upcoming Friday before the Bills game in Week 10, as they have a longish week, a week and a half. Well, this win against the Falcons, in my opinion, just pushed that back and prohibited that. Well, one, if the Dolphins are able to play like they did today against the Ravens on Thursday, hell, they can win that game. I know Lamar Jackson is expected to return for the Ravens, but the truth is that defense has been horrid this year. And if the Dolphins' run defense, who just shut down Bijan Robinson, who was the leading scrimmage yard player in the NFL, he came into this week averaging 150 yards per game. He finished with 48. So you shut down the number one yards man in the NFL today. So there is reasonable expectation to believe that Miami, if they bring the same type of defensive effort and performance this Thursday against the Ravens, that they could shut down Derrick Henry and maybe even Lamar and hell even get a win. But even if the Dolphins lose, because of the win today against the Falcons, I truly do believe Mike McDaniel just saved his job. Because do you really think Stephen Ross, who has reportedly been hesitant to make changes because he likes Mike McDaniel, wants to see if he could turn it around and would only fire Mike if their locker room is lost and they stop playing hard for him? Well, they're not doing that. So the earliest that I think Mike McDaniel could ultimately be fired is after the Week 11 game against the Commanders in Real Madrid. Why? Because you have 2 weeks after that game till you're next. You have a Week 12 bye after that Madrid game, and then you take on the Saints at home. That is the earliest, in my opinion, that McDaniel ultimately gets fired. Because I don't think he gets canned if you lose to the Ravens on Thursday because of how well this team played today and how hard they're playing. I mean, this team was locked in from the jump. Yeah, they had a 3-and-out on the first possession offensively, but they forced a 3-and-out defensively, have a 9-minute touchdown drive on like 16 plays, and they didn't look back from there. It was all three phases. This was the most complimentary game of football that we've seen the Dolphins play, I honestly think, since the 70-20 win against the Broncos. Really, like, the Dolphins have had some blowout wins. Largest leads since 2023 when they beat the Jets 30-0. But the Dolphins have not been able to put it together at all three phases like they did today. I mean, have we seen a dominant performance in terms of time of possession from Miami like this under Mike McDaniel? Maybe it's just skipping my mind right now, but I don't think so. Having essentially a 16-minute differential in time of possession is flat out unheard of. You do not see that in the NFL. The Dolphins had the football offensively nearly 67% of the game. No wonder why you were able to dominate. They ran the ball effectively, and they were able to get it done, which is why this team looking so good as they did today probably saves McDaniel's job, because you can point to this performance that says this team is not quitting. This team is still playing hard for Mike, and he deserves to be at least allowed to coach the rest of the season. But let me know your thoughts. Do you still think Mike McDaniel should ultimately be fired during the middle of the season? Y for yes or N for no. Pin comment, let me know your thoughts. I'm not saying he should be under contract for a time past the season. I'm not saying he deserves to be kept for the remainder of the season. But I'm just telling you, I know how this league operates. It's obvious how Stephen Ross wants to operate in terms of running this organization. And it's very clear and obvious that there are no plans from Miami to fire Mike McDaniel in the middle of the season. And you can definitely expect them to at least hold on to him for the next month. Like I mentioned a little bit earlier in the show, there's no world, in my opinion, where McDaniel is fired prior to the bye week. That is the earliest he could be fired. And I think it would take Miami losing the next 3 games by embarrassing fashion. Not every time, but blowouts almost every time. Like Dolphins lose to the Ravens by 2 scores at home. Then you go and play the Bills at home and you lose by 2 scores. And then you go to Madrid and lose. Okay, then we're probably getting McDaniel out of here. But is there an expectation that that happens? I don't know. Maybe I'm drinking the Kool-Aid a little bit. But this Dolphins football team, Coop, I'm going to say it. They looked competent. The word incompetence can't be used because of the way Miami played. And I can't wait to watch more of the film, the All-22, see some advanced numbers on Monday morning and Monday afternoon. Because if my eyes told me the right things, that when we watched the game live, the secondary played lockdown. The defensive front 7 dominated the Falcons' offensive line. And heck, even the Dolphins' offensive line dominated this game for the most part. More coming up here in a second, but this episode is brought to you by PrizePicks. You and I make decisions every single day. Well, the right decisions on PrizePicks can get you paid. So simple. All you do is pick more or less and at least 2 player stats. And if you get your picks right, you could cash in. So many different features PrizePicks offers you, one of them being stacks. You could now pick the same player in your lineup up to 3 times. You could pick a Devon H.M. carries. You could pick receptions. And you could also pick rushing yards, all in the same entry, only on PrizePicks. Which players are going off, which ones are overhyped. Make your picks in less than 60 seconds and put your takes to the test. I did not pass my test in this week's game. I went more than Bijan Robinson and less than Tua Tagovailoa longest completion, Bijan rushing yards. Both of those went the opposite. I did get Jalen Waddle receptions correct, but that's not good enough to cut it as I did a power play. Download the PrizePicks app today and use code CLNS to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code CLNS at PrizePicks to get $50 in lineups when you play your first $5 lineup. PrizePicks. It's good to be right. I mean, I do think, as we continue to talk about this game and Mike McDaniel's job status, you have to give him a lot of credit. And I briefly mentioned it throughout the beginning portions of this video. His ability to keep the locker room locked in and intact is actually impressive. I mean, I really do got to give him credit. And maybe it's not him. Maybe it's the assistant coaches, like an Anthony Weaver, like a Bobby Slowick. I don't know. I'm just throwing things out there. But for Miami to have the disaster that they've had this season, I mentioned the blown games against New England late, against Carolina, Los Angeles, the embarrassing effort last week against the Browns, the comments in the media from Tua a couple weeks ago after the Chargers game. Like, all of the noise outside of the locker room has been about the incompetency, the dysfunction of the Miami Dolphins, and it's all fingers being pointed at Mike McDaniel. Yet he's able to keep the locker room together and have them come on the road against a team that is 3-3, the Falcons. Many people believe them to be a potential playoff team in the NFC. And he has the ability to make sure they're locked in, they're ready to play, and dominate Atlanta. I mean, how many times have we said this year when speaking on Coach McDaniel that he cannot lead a locker room, he never has them fired up, ready to play, and he never has them locked into the attention to detail? I mean, I can't even count it. I've said it at least 10 times. But he had it today. And I don't know if this really speaks to the issues happening in Atlanta right now. They had a lot of injuries. But they were still 6.5-point favorites. And most people would predict and pick the Falcons to win, despite missing Michael Penix, Drake London, Jalen Walker, and some other players. But Miami came out and dominated. It's certainly fascinating. Make sure you are subscribed because we're going to continue to be here every day with Miami Dolphins content. We are going to be live tomorrow. We'll be live this upcoming Thursday for Thursday Night Football against the Ravens as well. I mean, let's use the end of this video to maybe talk about the future. I'm not going to try to come up here and spin a sob story in a fairy tale rest of the season, because if you think the Dolphins at 2-6 still have a chance to make the playoffs, you're delusional. I mean, they would legitimately have to only lose one game the rest of the season. There's 9 games left. They would have to go 8-1 to go 10-7. That's just not going to happen. I mean, you look at the rest of the AFC. There's a lot of good teams that are 4-3, 6-2, 5-3, and you don't see the possibility of being there at 9-8. So you'd have to go 8 of your next 9. Is that going to happen? No, it's not. And I know a lot of people are going to talk about how this win actually may hurt the Miami Dolphins because it impacts draft position. And if the Dolphins do end up going on a run here where they rattle off, just say like 5 of 7, where they end up going 7-10 this season, it will do more harm than good because you ruin your draft position and you also might not make the changes because you convinced Stephen Ross that, hey, this team started to play really well at the back half of the year. Mike McDaniel had those boys fired up. I actually agree with that statement for the most part, and we'll see how the year progresses. But the point of making this video and the title of thumbnail, everything you saw, if you're still watching, is to make the point that you cannot and should not expect Mike McDaniel to be fired anytime soon. He will be the coach of this football team, in my opinion, through the Real Madrid game. And then after that is when we start to have a conversation. Like I mentioned, if the Dolphins lose 3 in a row in bad fashion, couple standalone games, primetime Thursday Night Football, standalone in Madrid, yeah, you're going to fire him. You are. But if they win 1, they win 2 of those games, like he's going to probably finish out the season. He's here to relay the message. Don't shoot the messenger. You guys know what I want. If you've been subscribed to the channel. Which, if you haven't been, change that. You're still watching today's show. You clearly like what we're doing. Subscribe. Join the family here at Dolphins Today as we try to get to 77K subscribers. Under 50 away. Let's get there.